Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Shishir Basu from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. Today we are going to talk on module Women in Folk under the paper Women, Media and Films. The present topic, Women in Folk Media, has a capacity to address a huge area of research and information. It has a propensity to proliferate into an amorphous discussion. So, for the beginners, it needs to be programmed with precision, avoiding the temptation to stuff the discussion with cumbersome details which may be important for a scholar but redundant for a beginner. Therefore, Women in Folk Media calls for a deliberation at a broader level. The objective of this module are to present the background as to how the folklore has become an area of study. Discussion will be made on the contribution of the Western scholars to the studies of folklore. Discussion will also be made on the contribution of the British scholar in the studies of Indian folklore and describe the folklore of Bengal as an example to understand the importance of folklore in the Indian cultural ethos. In this unit, we have discussed the media and culture as two broad themes. We have contextualized the roles of media and culture in the areas of studies related to women issues in general and women issues in India in particular. We will discuss the place of women in Indian folklore and find out how important the folk is in understanding the cultural ethos in India. The depiction of women in modern media channels can also be understood. In the following module, we will focus on the patriarchy. Let us define folk. We should do it by using it as a noun. A noun denotes clan, family, king, kindred, kingfolk, kingsmen, nation, people, race, society, and tribe. Folk used also as an adjective like ancestral, ethnic, indigenous, national, native, traditional, and tribal. The huge variety of synonyms suggests one thing, that very clearly we understand that while dealing with folk, the meaning of its boundaries stretches from family to nation and then race. As far as the spatial feature is concerned, again the words like traditional, ancestral, tribal suggest the germination of folk in the womb of some timeless past. The beginner must keep this in his/her mind, that when it is in the context of folk, is media, it is behavior with manifold expressions sprouting from the various significant activities of life. The folk media was created far back in the web of hoary antiquities, rooted in the then socio-religious, socio-economic, socio-political experiences. This media was created in its world of direct human communication, where the various physical efforts were supported by oral, musical ways connected with the audience. This area of first-hand and direct communication, comprising oral narration, rituals, crafts, art, music, and other forms of vernacular expressive culture, in fact, formed the media of the bygone times. The genesis was in Europe. This mode of communication or connecting with the world and life around was always there, continuing from the time immemorial with all its raw and unpretentious energy emanating from the soil itself. Eventually, coming down to the 19th century, This world of activities needed a comprehensive word. The word all-inclusive in nature was found in 1846 by a British antiquarian, William John Thomas. He coined the word folklore to describe the manners, customs, observances, superstitions, ballads, proverbs, and other materials of the olden times. So, it may be said that the passion to understand folk and its ways of communication, precisely defined by the term folklore, stated seriously in the late 18th century and became quite strong in the early 19th century. Again, it must be remembered that the coining of the word folklore does not mean the inception of collection and collecting and classifying the folk activities. In Europe, the rulers had long ordered the collecting of traditions that would glorify them. Similarly, the religious leaders had gathered dangerous beliefs in order to weed them out. However, the scientific study of folk and folklore started with the efforts made in 1846 as mentioned above. It may be questioned by a learner as to why, in the first place, one is referring to the European hegemony in the field of folklore studies. Did it really happen for the first time that in Europe, folk and folklore got a serious attention from intellectual and scholars from different disciplines? The answer is yes. In the 19th century, fascination with folklore in scholars with interest in literature, philology, religion, psychology, history, archaeology, anthropology, and other fields reached a high point. They insisted that the customs and acts of illiterate peasants were remnants from a remote human past and should be collected before they are bound to disappear as civilization advanced. Thus, with such learning, the British Folklore Society was founded in 1878. Then, gradually across Europe, such activities emerged and prevailed. In America too, roughly after 10 years, such a society came up. Schools and methods in folklore studies. At this point, a short reference should be made to different approaches to address the question of origin of folklore. It should be mentioned that the major schools of thoughts in anthropology have influenced such studies deeply. One must know that the explanations to account for the origin of folklore have been particularly by following schools. The Indian school, led by Theodore Benfey, held that the European folk tales had originated in India and spread from this place. The mythological school, headed by Max Muller, held that all folk tales were survivals of ancient nature myths, while ritualists like Pierre Saint-Yves tried to establish that all folk tales had originated from rituals. There came up some important methods. Some methods were generated by trends of thought of those times, like historical geographical method, psychoanalysis method, and the method to study folklore in its immediate social context. Then there is the method of psycho-functionalist premise, which underlines that folklore is socially sanctioned fantasy. Structuralist method and a few other important methods were also in vogue. There lies no scope here to make an elaborate discussion of these methods, as that will be needed at the next level of study. The Indian effort. We have made sufficient digression to get an overview of the perennial world of folklore. explored by the European enthusiasts. Now, coming to the enchanting world of Indian folklore studies, which started in the 70s of the 19th century, Bengal, we again came across the fact that the impact of British folklorists' works inspired Indian as well, since India remained a colony of the British Raj for almost 200 years. The Raj has its own compulsions. The white ruler and the missionaries of this period of British Raj had an ulterior motive to comprehend the mind of Bengal to strengthen their hold here. Comprehending folklore and its different dimensions was understood to be the most successful key to control the mind of Bengalis. Leaving aside the factor of ulterior motive, there is no denying of the fact that a proper study of the different components of folklore can help an outsider understand the psyche of a particular community. It is more so because folklore does not entertain any element of hypocrisy. Its sense of honesty as a social construct is remarkable. Equally astonishing is its simple and direct method of making unpretentious statements on the discrepancies and contradictions of life. Life evolves here as it is. Coming back to the British efforts in India, descriptive ethnology of Bengal was an important one that was published in 1872. Folk tales started getting collected. Sons of Bengal like Aghor K. Chattopadhyay, Dakshina Ranjan Majumdar, Upendra Kishore Rai Chaudhary, and a few others got inspired to work on folk literature. They came forward with a nationalistic spirit to work on the source literature and had long remained neglected by its own scholars. Rabindranath Tagore's contribution. One cannot forget mentioning Tagore's well-meaning effort to highlight the treasure of folk literature in his unforgettable creation, Loko Sahitya, where he formulates principles and parameters to analyze folklore systematically. He points out eternal appeal, raw freshness, and picturesqueness of folk literature. He has analyzed the invaluable folk rhymes celebrating a child's life and documented folk songs with a critical eye. Women in Bengali folklore. Finally, after a lot of rumbling, one reaches the area of women's life as projected by Bengali folklore. Let us take a very specific area which reveals with intense sincerity women's gaze, which acts and reacts in the given world of religion and society as ordained by patriarchy. Marriage is a central event in women's life as it entirely overpowers and controls her identity. It is taken for granted that her existence has been only when she gets a home and hearth only after her marriage. The unmarried girl can never imagine to have a share of earth in the house of her father. Next, she has to prove her worth in the house of her husband by giving birth to male children. And yet, she is assailed by a nagging fear that the security of her home may be shattered any moment as she may lose her husband to the other women, who can take away her position in her own home, which she has reared with so much of attachment. Then the thought of her husband's death also generates a terrible nightmare. Devoid of any independent social security and financial cushion, the life of the girl child obviates the first level of her fear that she may not get a good husband and a fruitful married life, and this she does by praying to different gods and goddesses and performing rituals. Then, after she has entered the long coveted married life, The sense of basic fear and insecurity does not leave her. A sense of helplessness haunts her as to what becomes of her life later. She is jilted by her husband if she brings another wife, if she becomes a widow and finally gets thrown out of her own home. The Bibha Sangit, marriage songs, and the Brata Kathas of Bengal are the areas where women is perhaps the most articulate. These give an insight into the wave of feminine psyche. These articulations are crisscrossed with the strange shades of fear and hope, longing to transcend the given hurdles of inevitable circumstances with the help of the blessings of gods, goddesses, and the supernatural powers. The glitters of merrymaking, the happiness of nuptial songs, the rituals of betrothal, the celebrations of the smearing with turmeric gloss over the features of anxiety, the predicament she faces in a society over which she does not have any control. Moreover, the image and status she carries of herself and projects is also not of her own making. She is the construct of the patriarchal society which holds the land, controls the cattle, and overpowers every source of life. We will find in these following songs the way she smiles and wails openly. In India, the status of patriarchy has always been overpowering, and Bengal has been no exception. It has shaped the values, norms, and ethos of the society from the remote past. In the vast rural societies, particularly the male muscle's power got greater appreciation because it tilled the soil, enjoyed harvest, and generated affluence. The birth of a girl child remained unwanted. The girl child eclipsed the joys of a family. She stood as a burden to be got rid of as soon as possible. She was married off when a mere child. There are records which say a girl child of 6 or 7 months was married off to a boy of 2 or 3 years. When one tries to find out the reason, one comes across a popular adage, which means, what is the use of possessing a girl child? There is no sense of glory associated with her life. Neither is there any assurance as to what is going to be her fate after marriage either. The son, as he is to leave for the bride's house, tells his mother, "O mother, let me go and get a dasi for you." Until today, the patriarchal frame of expression happens to be in use without any kind of soul searching and protest. Yet, there are dreams and expectations and the misgivings associated with marriage in the heart of women waiting to sever her bonds with her kin. Marriage has a gloss of celebration. It holds the promise of a new household, promise of progeny, but at the cost of losing her roots. When marriage is fixed and the father of the girl finalizes the proposal, the words from the girl touch one. She says, "O father, why did you put your daughter at stake? Despite there were so many buffaloes in the village, you lost your daughter and not them in the gamble." And the inherent tragedy of a woman's life is revealed in the lines. The father is aware of the impending separation with his daughter, and the choral song says, "Get up, Dasarath, give away your daughter, your eyes stream down, bring your towel and wipe your tears." The emotion of the girl to get married soon are expressed by the chorus. She says to her mother, "You kept me in your womb for 10 months and 10 days, nurtured me and helped me grow. Now, severing me from your Gotra, you tie me to somebody else's Gotra. Such is your heart. O mother, you have tied me to stone. Do not forget me, O Ma. None is my own except you." And there is one, perhaps the most touching song sung by the bride, that is, the daughter now a bride about to leave her parental home. And she says, "The young cow and the ox are born of the womb of the mother cow. The brother and sister are born in the womb of the mother. Brother, your destiny makes you the master of the family and places me in a stranger's home. Destiny provides you, O brother, sumptuous food and leaves me in a hand-to-mouth state." The world of concealed longing and misgivings gets a kind of panacea in the power generated by the vratas. The canonical religion and the pantheon of gods and goddesses make a domestic appearance in the world of the rustic, semi-literate, even a literate woman's pursuance of vratas. She, with utmost honesty, observes them lest the peace and the happiness of her family get threatened. The hinterlands of woman's consciousness become distinct when one tiptoes into the world of Brata Kathas. Let us discuss about Brata Katha. The elevated pedestal of the high-flown metaphysical knowledge has even remained elusive and inaccessible to the mass. But the essential message of the higher philosophy, tutoring the concepts of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and the awareness of the concept of right and wrong, good and evil, and the need to curb the six carnal agents of sin, such as lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego, and jealousy, have even been transmitted to the lesser and formerly uneducated minds, especially women, through such observation of vratas. This gradually, in a diluted form, created inroads to reach the common people. The vratas entered the interiors of family, and in the vratas and ritual worship lay woven meaningfully normative messages to inform and elevate the mass mind. One witnesses in vratas a fusion of the methods of worship practiced both by Aryans and non-Aryans, which remain popular all over India. Rituals, worship of natural objects, totems, and deities of different forms have gradually become part and parcel of vratas. Water, sun, moon, and stars are the common natural objects of worship. Trees and rivers are widely worshipped. The intention behind such practices was to inform and educate the young girls who were not able to go like boys to Guru Griha. These vratas taught them the do's and don'ts of life. In Bengal, there is a classification of vratas. Some are to be specifically followed by virgins, and some are prescribed for the married women. Whatever the classification may be, the basic thrust of these vratas lies in prayers to gods and goddesses for security, affluence, and progeny. Chandi, Lakshmi, and Shoshti happen to be the reigning deities. There are other vratas in which women pray to Shiva, Surya, and Chandra. It is the shoulders of women which were primarily entrusted with the responsibility of performing the rites. They have dedicatedly observed the 13 festival in 12 months, The popular saying in Bengal, Baro Mashe Tero Parban, reveals women's commitment to such celebrations. The high philosophy of Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Disho Dehi, the celebrated prayer occurring in Durga Saptashti, is transmitted through these vratas as well. The big mass of women folk fast and remain without meals, sacrifice their hunger and thirst to see the children, spouse, and kin happy. They pray to the rising sun, to the river water, to the totems and household deities to ward off danger from their husband. The wife prays for long life of her husband. She prays to the gods to stop her husband from bringing a second wife. She prays to the supernatural forces to blast off the head of such a second woman in her life. Let us discuss about kathas. Kathas means stories. Follow a very common pattern. These are done to get respite in dire situations. In these, one mostly comes across a faithful and true spouse who prays for the redemption of a bankrupt husband, a loyal wife holding penance for an incurably ill husband, a barren wife, a girl not getting a groom, and many others in unhappy state are the familiar faces whose eager prayer to get riddance of the cause of suffering constitute the base of the kathas. The gods and the goddesses of Hindu pantheon assume human forms. They are sometimes angry and sometimes benevolent, cursing and redeeming the devotees. After a lot of suffering, finally one's prayers are granted, but with a warning that whoever disbelieves in the potential of such vratas face doom. By the grace of the sought after god or goddesses, good wins and evils are defeated. Curse of poverty, barrenness, and any kind of deprivation is lifted and the strength of virtue wins. The stress is on good deeds and suffering, and the target devotee is women folk, the most coveted section of human society which takes its life to nurture family. Three important goddesses, Lakshmi representing wealth, Shoshti representing productivity, Chandi representing strength, protection and security, play a pivotal role in various vratas. Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, is worshipped in the much celebrated Kojagari Lakshmi Puja, a vrata which is close to the hearts of people. This vrata is observed in Bengal with great devotion until today. Women worship Lakshmi, who shall grant their family prosperity. But without children, what is the worth of a family? So the goddess Shoshti comes to rescue. Women perform the vratas in various forms for the goddesses, praying for children and seeking a long life for the progeny. Finally comes the concern to protect the health and the home. Women prays in so many ways to Chandi for eternal security of her home. There are miracles and magic escapes in the message of these vratas. Three important vratas of Bengal which still continue to worship Lakshmi, Shoshti and Chandi are Kojagari Lakshmi Puja, Neel Shoshti and Jaimangal Chandi respectively. The Katha of Kojagari Lakshmi Puja describes how the curse of the bankruptcy of a king is defeated by his suffering queen as she observes this particular Kojagari Brata. The story says the king inadvertently buys an iron idol which is in fact Alakshmi, poverty. All the protective powers of his kingdom leave him. Finally, he receives redemption as his queen, despite in a thoroughly abject condition, cries her heart out to Goddess Lakshmi and worships her. All the lost glory comes back to his kingdom. This Vrata enjoys a very important place in the female psyche of Bengal and is observed without fail on the first full moon day after Vijayadashami. In Nil Shoshti, goddess Shoshti redeems a Brahmin couple from a curse that kills all their offspring as they start observing Nil Shoshti. In this Vrata, one notices how the image of the central female deity, that is Shoshti, overlaps with a male one, that is Shiva, and makes a montage of dual deities, the Nil and Shoshti. The Jaimangal Chandi Vrata depicts the story of the birth of Jaidev and Jayavati by the grace of Ma Mangal Chandi. Later, their marriage is solemnized at the behest of Ma Mangal Chandi. Jayavati, from her childhood, has learned the message of the Mangal Chandi. Mangal Chandi Vrata, which teaches one who observes this Vrata does not have any sorrow, does not drown, does not get burned. One is not wounded by a sword even. A person regains his lost property and gets back life even if touched by death. Jayavati has to enter the test of fire to prove the worth of her faith. Her husband Jayadev, to test the strength of the Mangal Chandi Vrata, creates terrible situations for Jayavati. Every measure is taken to break her own willpower. He even throws her only child into different types of peril. But Jayavati, by the grace of Mangal Chandi, is able to protect her son. Elements of exaggeration, fantasy, and unshakable faith in the saving grace of the supernatural are woven in the texture of the story. These became the inseparable wrap and weft of Vratas. The instructors and moral guardians of the Hindu society since time immemorial must have created such religious lessons and entrusted them with women because she is sincere, caring, and nurturing, and who can go to the extent to sustain the four walls of her home. The rituals of Vratas, the words written in the form of the sacred kathas, stories, can be seen from gender-sensitive angle also. The act of the patriarchy in making women the agency of these regular celebrations was obviously a need of time to keep a control of society. It was done by keeping a control on families by molding women. The patriarchy, down the centuries, has both direct and indirectly molded the mindset of women and taught them as to what should be their object of desire. Down the centuries, she has offered her devotion to the deities, and the quintessence of her prayer is, "Let my spouse live, my son live, let none die in my family. Let me not even see the dead face of my spouse. Let me not see my son's dead face. Let my spouse be away from a second wife. Let me make even kin's life secure, full of riches and health, and thus let me leave this world." Sejuti Vrata has such motivating prayers. "O, the God of my fate, bless me with a princely husband. Let me be the mother of several sons. Let me not walk on the mundane earth. Let my family enjoy prosperity of harvest and productive cattle. Let me have the boon of eternal conjugal bliss. Let the head of a co-wife be blasted." These prayers originate from a concealed fear which has continuously goaded women to even remain aware of her socio-economic situation, that she is totally dependent on her spouse's life and well-being. This obsessive fear compelled her to perform the rites more earnestly. She stuck to the rituals and observed them minutely, lest there be any aberrations in her brata and doom would be following. If strictures are not followed properly, she is threatened of total disaster. She is taught that terrible will be the consequences. The supernatural element of these kathas may show triumph over death, but in reality these brothers have made female psyche a hostage of fear psychosis. These tools of patriarchy and the creations of rustic priests literally have not taught her to stand fearlessly, to look squarely into the face of the challenges of life with confidence. The impact of such rituals has gradually waned down to Renaissance in Bengal, which has encouraged the spirit to question the significance of such ritualistic practices. In fact, urbanization, the exodus of the rural mass from the villages, the fast changing economic scenario, along with the spread of education, the rise of scientific temper and technology, and the stress on the issues of the emancipation of women to a great extent have weakened the grip of folk rituals. This is not to say that women have lost their faith in a benevolent Almighty. The female psyche, due to its ingrained sense of concern and its natural propensity towards nurturing its home and hearth, desires to fall back upon some kind of soothsaying, fasting, and observing bratas, which may not be of traditional origin even. In modern India, bratas have travelled from one state to the other. A popular brata in which Santoshi Ma is worshipped as has been accepted by many women in Bengal too, with a deep sense of devotion. The Katha of Santoshi Ma says, if women abstain from taking sour foodstuff and unfailingly feed a cow the prasad consisting of jaggery and gram, they will get fast relief in the situation of peril after a certain number of weeks. Human mind needs support of an anchor and waits for some magic potion to heal up its dens of anxiety. Women's life is creative, protective, and nurturing. It is her nature to protect her child as she is a mother. She wants a home, peace, and prosperity where she can see her own people happy. The outer world throws a stiff challenge to these basic desires sustained by a woman. The larger life is rough, violent, and it keeps on generating insecurity. The world of men folk has always been replete with disasters. The world at present has perhaps become even more terror stricken. The situation of order has been replaced with greater chaos. Human beings in general, and women, the homemakers in particular, perhaps desire to rely more on the supernatural than on elected governments and social systems, and subsequently the prosperity to observe brothers and subsequently the propensity to observe brothers in newer forms, it seems, is on the increase. The high commercialization and the support of the electronic media to revive the rituals also are attracting women to celebrate and observe rituals of brothers in a magnificent manner. The popularity of Karwa Chauth and Chhath reveals how more and more women, both literate and illiterate, are stepping into the world of vratas. So students, let's now summarize what we have learned in this module. Folk culture and literature evolved out of folklore is a rich repository of Indian wisdom. It also represents and magnifies the shortcomings of Indian way of life. Hence, It is important to study folk in order to understand the status of women in India. Folk as an area of study was initiated in Britain by William John Thomas in 1846. It is described by a term folklore which includes manners, observances, superstitions, ballads, etc. The concept of studies in folklore was brought to India by the British. An important outcome of this effort was the anthology called Descriptive Ethnology of Bengal. With this, the folk study in India was initiated. The Indian scholars became interested and got into action in collecting, collating, and studying the folk material. An example of folk practices, the Bengali folk, was considered in this module. The Bivaha Sangit, Bratas, and Kathas are the repositories of the thoughts of Bengali women. They fast and pray to goddesses Lakshmi for influence, Shoshti for progeny, and Chandi for security. Kathas are the stories which are told to the women, assuring them that God and goddesses listen to one's prayers and shower blessings for penance. If one analyzes the purposes behind bratas, kathas, and penance, one would find that these are all for women and not for men. Their position in the society is subservient to men, and their purpose in life is to look after the well-being of male members and children in the family, particularly the male child. This is how the society has evolved and kept the women under complete authority of men. Thank you very much for being with us. Hope you will study more folklore and increase your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you.